Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back for your full moon and Scorpio transit update reading. Full moon will station exact on May 1st, 2026 at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will station exact at 11 degrees and 21 minutes in Scorpio, and then the sun will be at 11 degrees and 21 minutes in Taurus. And as always, I will have the chart pulled up right here on the screen so you can kind of zoom in and look at the details there, and then I'll have my notes to the right. So if you see me glancing over to the side during this video, I'm just taking a look at all the beautiful notes we have to go through. But compared to the other moon cycles that we've talked about this year alone, we don't have as many direct aspects as we have been looking at, and that we will see again for the Taurus new moon because it's going to kick right back into gear with that. But even though we don't have as many direct aspects, there is still a lot of prominent and potent energies, even if some of those energies are more subtle. And part of that reason is because we are in the Aries moon cycle right now, because the moon cycles always start with the new moon, and the Aries new moon happened after the Libra full moon during Aries season. So the Aries moon cycle is currently ruling over this Scorpio full moon that we will be moving through. And both Aries and Scorpio are ruled by Mars. And right now, Mars is in domicile or is in its domicile in Aries, and then it's also partially ruled by our Pluto, which is in Aquarius. So almost, let me see, where are they going to be? So they won't be sextile one another by the time the full moon stations exact. It'll be just out of that 10-degree orb. Mars will be at 16 degrees Aries, and Pluto will be at 5 degrees Aquarius. But Pluto will be getting ready to turn around to station retrograde just 5 days after this full moon stations exact. And the combination of the Scorpio full moon being ruled by that domicile Mars and the Pluto, and Scorpio represents the underworld. Scorpio is about death and rebirth and transformation and the shedding of the old skins, right? It's like the snake that sheds its skin so it can become anew. And it does that multiple times during its lifetime. It's constantly evolutionizing itself. So, this idea of allowing death to usher us through this full moon and continue on, being ruled by a new moon, or this moon cycle being ruled by that new moon in Aries, which is all about new beginnings, there's kind of this. My initial instinct was to say tug of war, but the tug of war denotes kind of oppositions, where in actuality, the death of what was and the rebirth of what is becoming constantly, they are working together very beautifully and very harmoniously in this, as long as you are willing and ready to let go of what you don't need in order to become what you are destined for. So, if you're ready to let go, if you're not grasping onto what is ready to be released and transmuted and integrated elsewhere, or just again, released in general, if you're not grasping onto what is ready to be let go, this moon cycle will reveal a lot to you in terms of the ways you've held yourself back in the past, but also the ways that you can utilize the wisdom and the lessons of holding yourself back, and how you can use that to almost like not catapult, but almost usher you into this new transition, this new beginning. And I suggest, if you didn't watch the video, go back and watch the Aries new moon reading that I did just before, about a month ago at this point, or maybe a little bit less. It's on my profile. Go back and watch that video, because being in the Aries moon cycle, there will be themes that we moved through on the day of the Aries new moon that trickle and percolate throughout this whole moon cycle until we get to the Taurus new moon. It's especially true since we do still have a lot of energy in Aries as we are moving through this. We'll have Neptune, Saturn, Mars, the asteroid Persephone, Eris, and Mercury and Chiron. So even though the sun is already in Taurus, Venus has already moved out, we've ushered ourselves through a lot of the heavy hitters of Aries season. We still have a lot of Aries energy. So the overarching message of that Aries new moon reading will still be prevalent as we usher ourselves through the Scorpio full moon. And I will say, just looking at my last year's Scorpio full moon for me represented a massive release. And it was the beginning. It was like, imagine if the cogs in a machine were perpetually turning opposite directions. I can't even do it with my fingers. They want to turn the same way. But anyway, perpetually turning the wrong direction, right? But because they were perpetually turning in the wrong direction, the machine found a way to make it work in the wrong direction. The Scorpio full moon for me last year represented almost like a wrench being thrown in the machine so we could stop everything that we were doing in its tracks and then allow the mechanisms to kind of get back to turning the right direction. Whether that was both of them going opposite, one of them going opposite, whatever happened, it was a massive shift of recognition, integration, initiation in its own right, and moving forward towards what is actually true. Because up until that point, I wasn't living my truth, but also up until that point, I think I was at a point where I was ready to finally let go of the non truth that I was living so I could begin to discover and unfurl the truth of what actually is. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in this Scorpio full moon as well. But again, in a more subtle way that's not necessarily in your face, overt, but very behind the scenes and very unconscious in its own way. And when the full moon stations exact, again at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Eastern Daylight Time, excuse me, all four of the angles of the chart for that moment it stations exact will be lit up. So of course we'll have our sun and our moon. Our sun will be conjunct the midheaven of the full moon chart within just over a degree. So the sun will be conjunct the midheaven, just over 1 degree orb. The moon will be conjunct the IC with just over a 1 degree orb. And then we'll have Eris almost exactly square the sun and the moon within a 59-minute orb. So just under that less than a 1 degree mark. Eros will be in Leo at 10 degrees and 22 minutes. And then we'll have Pluto making a more looser square, but still relevant here at 5 degrees and 30 minutes. So, as the emphasis of the angles is a very fast moving and quick paced transit, it's not going to be on the angles for the entire day, just really maybe 20 minutes, if that. There's still that emphasis of the squares of the sun and the moon, and then Eros and Pluto. And so if we look at Eros first, because again, that's a less than 1 degree orb, even though it's at the very tail end, it's still less than a 1 degree orb. Eros is akin to Cupid when we look at the asteroids in our astrological placements. Eros is the son of Persephone, or sorry, excuse me, the son of Aphrodite. He is the god of love, but more in the erotic love. And it's not necessarily only about sex there. It's how we can make our lives and live our lives in a more erotic, sensual exploration of allowing ourselves to discover ourselves in the world around us through experience and through lighting up that sensual side of our nature. It is also sexual erotic love in that sense, and the ways we can be experimental in that sexual erotic love. But now, squares are tense aspects. When they are dealing with energies that aren't naturally as harmoniously aligned together, squares can bring a lot of tension and discomfort within the body. But along with the tension and the discomfort, it helps you ground that energy into reality because it's helping you get a more practical, logical understanding of what it means to tap into that energy in its fullness. So while it can be uncomfortable, it's helping you to make tangible that energy in the physical realm rather than just having it be a concept that we think about. So with Eros squaring our sun and our sun is obviously our identity, our moon is our internal. It's like the darkest parts of ourselves in its own sense. So our personal identity and our emotions and the most deep dark aspects of who we are that we usually keep reserved for either just ourselves or our close loved ones, making that tense aspect to Eros, it's almost asking us to take a hard look at the ways in which we either approach life through through our senses and our sensuality and our erotic nature, or the ways we don't. Because I think, especially in modern society, the way that sexualization has been vilified or villainized to the point where we now have Lilith, which is all this dark aspects of the feminine that have been repressed. Sexualization has been villainized to such a vast degree that even the idea of approaching life sensually and flirting with your baristas and just like being radical enough to find the joy and the elation and the sensuality and allowing your senses to be stimulated even with all of the darkness that is surrounding not only America, not only our society, but for the world at large right now. We are in a very dark period. And tapping into that sense of eroticism is in itself its own form of resistance because tapping into the eroticism helps us tap into our senses and helps us feel everything more wholly and completely. That's not just the good, but it's also the hard and the dark and the heavy. But I think because there is so much of the dark and the heavy externally right now, we are almost being guided to numb so we don't feel the darkness and the heaviness because if we're not feeling it, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's all set up in the system that we live in. But that's why allowing yourself to see the darkness going on externally and allowing your senses to tap into those subtle hints of beauty, even if it is just noticing a bird outside in a tree one day and just sitting with it for however long it's there. It could be 30 seconds, it could be 3 minutes, just sitting there and observing it and allowing the beauty to wash over you and feel how much joy and elation it brings you to just observe nature and just be present in nature. Eros in itself is is an asteroid that offers radical presence because we cannot be erotic. We cannot tap into our sensual nature unless we are fully present in the moment with the people that are surrounding us, or just with ourselves, or just with nature. You get it. It's just being fully present and fully there. So with Eros making that tense aspect between our sun and our moon, it's helping you ground into reality how much you have not allowed yourself to be present, not only with the good, but also with the darkness. Because in order to move through a revolution, you need to not only acknowledge the darkness, but feel it within your bones, feel it within your body, because as within, so without, as above, so below. If you are allowing yourself to be numb to the very dark truths of what's happening right now, and this is all scorpionic themed anyway, if you're allowing yourself to be numbed out to the very dark things that are happening in our world right now, and even more closely in your own community right now in a lot of cases, to numb yourself out and not let yourself feel the depths of that is also preventing you from feeling the elation. And the elation and the joy and the eroticism and the sensuality, that is an act of resistance in itself. So that is helping you, that tense aspect with Eros and Leo is helping you, again, bring awareness, bring illumination with the sun, and an internal awareness with the moon as to where you've been numb and where you haven't allowed yourself to be fully present and tapped into that sensual nature and that joy and that elation and also the depths of the darkness. And in that recognition, it's helping you ground that energy back into reality so you can start to be more present in your day-to-day life. So you can actually find those subtle moments of the joy, of the sensual nature, of all of that, and tap into it and express it outwardly and allow yourself to be seen in that, because that is resistance in itself. And then we add Pluto to that mix. So that, since Eros is an asteroid, I usually do pretty tight orbs with asteroids. So it's technically not opposite Pluto because it's just about a 5-degree orb with Pluto. But Pluto is playing a role to be square the sun and the moon here, because with the larger planets and the luminaries, I do a larger orb there. With Pluto involved in that, it's helping you like bring about a sense of transformation through your awareness of where you are not letting yourself be fully present and allowing yourself to move through the discomfort of what it means to be fully present in the world that we live in today. Because it's not all sunshines and daisies and rainbows all the time when you are present. Being present means being connected to truth. And sometimes the truth is fucking dark and dank and rancid at times, but it's not running away from that. Pluto is helping you learn how to sit with the discomfort of truth so you can embody that and not run away when the truth gets uncomfortable, but be present and be in like a luminary figure of truth. Be an embodiment of truth in that capacity, because the more you can sit with the discomfort of truth, the more you are able to embody the brightness and the boldness and the exterior, like whatever, there's not even a word for it, which is why it's kind of catching my breath. The more you can sit with the discomfort of truth, the more you can embody truth in all of its capacity, which includes the blinding light, and I mean blinding in like the most elevated sense. With all of that energy going on, we'll also have the sun being ruled by Venus, which has just transferred into Gemini. And our Venus is going to be directly sextile our Saturn. Both will be at 9 degrees with only a 4-minute orb. So 9 degrees and 10 minutes for Venus and Gemini, and 9 degrees and 14 minutes for Saturn in Aries. And so while we are moving through like this tough recognition and realization of how unpresent we have been and how we can learn how to sit with the presence of truth through the discomfort and through the elation both at the same time, Venus is helping give us a softer edge to that. And because Venus is in Gemini, it's Venus in itself is about the body, it's about the sensuality, it's about the values, it's about the beauty, it's how we can become a living embodiment of beauty in our everyday reality. But with Venus in Gemini, Gemini doesn't rule the head, but Gemini is the intellect. Gemini rules the hands. So there could be something that you can do with your hands while you move through the discomfort of what we just spoke on, especially when it comes to the discomfort. Make art, however that you could write, you could sculpt, you could draw. Just do something with your hands while you're learning how to sit with and move through the truth of or the discomfort of the truth, I should say. But ultimately, again, Venus is bringing a softer edge to that. So while you are moving through the discomfort, utilize your hands, utilize what you can sculpt into reality to bring more beauty even in the face of the discomfort and the darkness and the harsh truths. With again, Venus ruling the sun there and having that connection to Saturn, that near exact aspect, that's precise right there with the 4-minute orb, that's precise. Having Venus connected to Saturn, it's not only allowing you to sit with and face the darkness and bring beauty even in the face of the darkness, but there's a longevity to it with Saturn and Aries here. And because it's in Aries, it's about your will. Because it's in Aries, it's about the action you put behind your will, the action you put towards not running away, being fully present, being fully embodied, being fully engulfed in what it means to be a living embodiment of truth. And with Saturn's involvement there, the more you can like sit with and be present and sculpt something beautiful and tangible out of the darkness and out of the discomfort, the more it's actually going to help you along your own personal path towards your greater fulfillment and your whatever your idea of success is. Because Saturn is all about your personal success. It's about long-term commitment, it's about growth, it's about making your dreams tangible in a very tangible matter. So the way you can, whichever way you can take the darkness and the creation that Venus and Gemini can represent, the more you are actually aligning, whether consciously or unconsciously, to your greater path, to your greater truth. So I think that's a beautiful thing. We jump forward to Venus, so now let's jump back to Mercury at 27 degrees and 20 minutes in Aries. Mercury will be directly conjunct our Chiron at 27 degrees and 32 minutes. So another very, very close orb, 12 minutes away, much less than even a half of a degree away. And this conjunction with Mercury and Chiron brings back a lot of themes that we moved through for the Pisces new moon, the Libra full moon, the Aries new moon, a lot of the themes we've been moving through with first Chiron and Eris coming together to help crumble and destroy the walls of how our wounds have kept us safe in the past. We also had Mercury conjoining the North Node, where we spoke our dreams into reality. And then when Mercury conjoined Neptune, not only were we speaking our dreams into reality, we were speaking bigger dreams into reality and allowing our intellect to maneuver through the illusion and the disillusionment to figure out what is actually our truth. And so now with Mercury conjoining Chiron, it's putting together like the amalgamation of all of the things that we were doing with all of the other conjunctions and with the vulnerability we feel now that Eris had crumbled the walls that Chiron had built up to keep us safe in our coping mechanisms, so we didn't have to feel the pain of what has wounded us in the past, right? Eris knocked those foundations down, and as we were so busy speaking our dreams and bigger dreams into reality, we are now approaching the site of where our previously fortified walls were now crumbled. And so with Mercury there conjoining Chiron, it's being present in that vulnerability of where you used to be protected by your big giant castle walls. They're now crumbled. They're on the ground. They're dust. And you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, this is a little bit daunting. I used to be protected and now I'm not. There's no fortification here. There's nowhere I can hide. Not from anybody else, and especially not from myself. And since Mercury partially rules the intellect, or not even partially, Mercury is the ways that our brain functions and recognizes patterns and how we make sense of not only the world, but also our inner world and our inner universe as well. With Mercury coming together with Chiron after Chiron's walls have crumbled, this is a great opportunity to take a good look at yourself and realize that you didn't need the walls to feel safe. And the walls were actually all a creation of the mind. It was a prison of the mind, but you got so comfortable in your prison that you forgot it was a prison. And now that those walls have fallen, yeah, you're no longer safe from the external world, but you're also not entrapped in your own prison anymore, in the own walls of the prison that you've created. And so Mercury is asking you to get creative with the ways in which you have the opportunity now to create from the rubble. Mercury is a playful energy. Mercury is a trickster energy. And now that it's joined Chiron, when Chiron is still in this area of like being uncertain and approaching the final degrees of Aries, and 27 degrees Aries or 27 degrees in general is a Mercury degree. So Mercury is at home here. And in a way, having that leg up and in a fire sign where it is already fast paced there, Mercury is almost acting as a salve for Chiron to recognize just how fruitful the presence of opportunity is, just how fruitful the presence of space is. And especially since Uranus just moved into Gemini, not as I record this, but oh, it's just about to in like 2 days, I think. But by the time I post this, Uranus will be at 0 degrees, and then on the full moon, 0 degrees and 19 minutes Gemini. And the metaphor I used in the Taurus video was that with Uranus and Taurus, you may have felt bound or restricted or like you were in chains in some capacity. But the moment Uranus moves into Gemini, not only are you freed from those chains, but you take your awareness out of being matter and being in this body or in whatever body you envision yourself in, and you all of a sudden turn into the atmosphere itself, which is omnipresent, which is everywhere and also cannot be chained. So that's kind of the energy here that Mercury is offering Chiron. It's like, yes, you are exposed. There are no walls to hide behind, but it doesn't have to be daunting. See it as opportunity rather than as fear. It's just this simple shift of perspective of saying, "Oh my God, there's so much space. What am I going to do?" And saying, "Oh my God, there's so much space. What am I going to do?" Oh, I even just got chills when I said that. That's what Mercury's doing for Chiron right now. It's helping Chiron expand its awareness of what it means to be exposed and how visibility and exposure doesn't have to always mean scariness. It doesn't have to mean something you have to hide from. That's ultimately what Mercury's doing here. And our Venus is also ruled by that Mercury. So, and our Venus and Uranus is ruled by that Mercury, which is in Aries, conjoining Chiron on this full moon. And I think the two of those together just emphasize the idea of letting the transformation of what no longer serves you, including your mindsets, letting the transformation commence. It's well past time. And I think if you're watching this, you've already kind of been in that energy. So heck yeah, you're right on time. But let's move forward just for the sake of time, because I wrote a lot for Mars. Mars is the one that's kind of a heavy hitter in terms of what we're moving through, not only because it rules this full moon, but it's making a couple very tight aspects. So Mars will be at 16 degrees and 55 minutes in Aries. It will conjunct asteroid Persephone at 18 degrees and 31 minutes, so a less than 2-degree orb with that one. It'll trine Lilith at 14 degrees and 47 minutes in Sagittarius, which again, less than a 2-degree orb. Oh, and it will also square our Jupiter at 19 degrees and 1 minute Cancer, which is just over a 2-degree orb. And then finally, this is the tightest orb that Mars is making. It will quintile our Pluto. And quintiles are more rare aspects to move with, but they're subtle but potent energy. They're energies that you don't have to try, but you do have to become aware. So we'll get to that in a second because again, I have a lot written down just for these other aspects first. And I do want to start with this conjunction with Persephone because this gives me an energy of reclamation, right? Persephone, if you don't know the story of Persephone, she was a young innocent girl, daughter of Demeter. Great time, always living above earth. One day she's playing with her friends and the ground opens up. She gets swallowed by Hades. I don't want to go too much into it because I think in terms of mythology, Persephone is one of the more well-known stories. But essentially, Hades kidnaps her. Her uncle colluded with her father to kidnap her. Besides the point. And Demeter almost starves the entire earth. Eventually, Zeus and Hades realizes they have to do something to make this work for everybody so the earth does not or so the civilization of earth that honors these gods don't die, because if the people die, who's going to honor the gods? Of course, that's all they really care about. But anyway, they Hades essentially tricks Persephone into eating the pomegranate seed so that she's forced to stay in the underworld for half the year and then can go up in the above world for the other half of the year. But ultimately, the story of Persephone that I think a lot of people forget, it's that she's not only losing her innocence, but in that loss of innocence and being tricked and duped, she strengthens her discernment to the extreme. She strengthens her discernment. She's not so innocent anymore, but at the same time she also earns herself a kingdom. And Mars ruling Scorpio, which represents the underworld, Mars and Persephone coming together, it's almost a meeting of Hades, as Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, and Persephone. And so, in this subtle reunion, it's a subtle reclamation of, and a recognition of how much you can actually do with your seat of power. Yes, it's true, you've lost your innocence. And I think a lot of these aspects that we're moving through on the Scorpio full moon is going to emphasize that. Just a loss of innocence, of even just I would consider ignorance a sense of innocence in its own way, because if you are ignorant to something, you are unaware of it. And if you're not aware of it, you cannot be privy to it and you can't gain the lessons or the wisdoms from it. And there's a lot of destruction of ignorance and innocence in these aspects that we're moving through on this full moon. So it's allowing yourself to, again, not grip so tightly onto the version of yourself that was naive and innocent and didn't know any better, but allowing those parts of you to fall away and to die, so so the skin that is already shedding off and is ready to be released, so that can be released, so you can usher into the next iteration of whatever is next for you. And that's what this conjunction with Mars and Persephone is. It's putting action, not only recognizing how much you can actually do with the seat of your power, but putting action behind it and allowing it not to just be this idea, but you're actually like, I'm imagining Cersei because she's the first queen that came to my head, but I'm imagining her like she's always been aware of her power, so she's a bad example. But imagine if Cersei was innocent and never cruel and just like, oh, la 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 la. La. Imagine her finally getting to the throne and then just kind of sitting there next to her king, her husband, whatever it is, and not realizing that she has just as much power and authority as her husband does until she starts sitting in on the council meetings and she starts going to the hall when the citizens come in and she realizes that her voice actually means something. Her word means something. And she starts experimenting with, like, okay, if I can say this and that happens, what if I say this? So it's not necessarily in terms of you finding the seat of your power in like an external way, but it's almost like it's very much giving. Now that I think about it, it's like manifestation energy where you're going to start revealing to yourself just how powerful and magical your word is, especially as Mercury is conjoining Chiron. It's like you're going to speak. There will be instances where you still speak from the old wounds and watch whatever you speak from your old wounds and fears manifest like that. And then you're going to say, "Oh my God, wait, wait, wait. No, I don't want that to culminate. Hold on, hold on. If I spoke that from this mindset and that happened, what if I speak this from the mindset? Remember what I said earlier, just that change in diction where, oh my gosh, there's so much space. What am I going to do? Versus, oh my gosh, there's so much space. What am I going to do? First, you speak from that element of fear. Notice how it manifests almost instantly. And so you're going to say, well, what if I speak from this side? I have full body chills. What if I speak with this perspective? And you try it out one time, not even thinking much of it. And then bam, that thing happens. And you're like, okay, so what if I try to speak this? Bam. Whoa. Okay. I have full body chills. Okay, so if those things happened and they were small, what if I try to speak something bigger into existence? Bam, it's yours. And you'll find that the more you are speaking into existence, the more inner work you're going to have to do to align to the version of who you need to be in order to actually not only obtain, but maintain and sustain whatever it is that you were speaking from this, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? There's so much space. What am I going to do? What am I going to create? You need to continuously evolve in order to sustain what you are speaking. But by the time you start to recognize just how powerful your word is and just how magically you can obtain exactly what you speak, not only are you going to start being more aware and more conscious of the things you're speaking and from where you are speaking from, fear versus elevation, for example. Not only are you going to be more conscious and mindful of that, you're going to start taking that side of your life more seriously. And that's kind of the story of Persephone as well. She lost her innocence, but she gained a kingdom. And as a queen, you cannot not take your seat of power seriously. So it's almost like this evolution from maiden to mother, or from mother to crone, or hell, from maiden to crone in some instances. That doesn't mean you're gonna like reverse Benjamin Button and age really rapidly and all of a sudden go from like 23 to 68, but in terms of energy, because crone isn't just older women. Crone are, it's a frequency. It's a frequency that some people tap into very early just because of the things they've gone through. And, we won't even get too far into that, but trust in the longevity of your power and trust in your ability to maintain and sustain that power. And trust in the truth of your voice. And moving on from there, again, we will have Mars trine Lilith in fire signs. Mars is in Aries, Lilith in Sagittarius. Mars is in its domicile. Lilith loves to be in Sagittarius because it's a very wise and eccentric and fast-paced sign that is rooted in experience and its senses. It experiences or it learns about life through its experience, is what Sagittarius does. And Lilith has been playing a big role in all of our full and new moon cycles pretty much since she moved into Sagittarius, and a little bit before that too, when she was in the late degrees of Scorpio. And while her energy here is more subtle, there is this loop I do want to touch on because we have Lilith in Sagittarius, which is ruled by our Jupiter in Cancer, which is ruling over our moon in Scorpio, which is being ruled by our domicile Mars in Aries, which is trine our Lilith in Sagittarius, etc., etc. And as it's making this almost like closed container of self-contained rulership, it emphasizes a similar thing as Mars and Persephone, because it's about recognizing your power, and not only recognizing your power and taking your power more seriously, but with Lilith, there's an element of embodying those sides of yourself that have been, I should say, have been taught to be repressed and be shunted away and not integrated. You're learning the strength, and in order to take yourself more seriously, I should say this too. In order to take yourself more seriously, you need to take all aspects of yourself more seriously, which means embracing all sides of yourself, including those things that you've been taught to shame and repress over the years. So, as you are taking yourself more seriously and allowing these parts of yourself to become embodied, Lilith, being ruled by our Jupiter in Cancer, is almost allowing you to expand. It's allowing those energies that previously have been repressed, now that they're being integrated and honored. That honor, that those sides of yourself that you used to not look at are expanding, and because they're expanding, you are opening up your field to attract in more luck and opportunity rooted in the sides of yourself that you are now learning to integrate. And as you learn to integrate those sides of yourself with Jupiter ruling over the moon in Scorpio, as you're learning to integrate those aspects and those sides of yourself, it is tapping into the deepest, darkest parts of you, what you value, how you value yourself, how you move through the world, how you respond to the world emotionally, because emotions are essentially responses. They're not only like a guidance system, a compass, they're also the ways in which we respond to the world around us. And oftentimes it's the ways that our most inner self is exposed to the world and experiences the world. And again, with Mars, Mars is the planet of action, being in its domicile. It's like it's fiery action, passion, it's orientation. And Mars isn't just action, it's also Mars is a vastly like a planet that is vastly embedded in integrity and truth. Because Mars's action is towards truth. Mars's action is always leading you back to your own sense of integrity. So again, it's this closed loop of the more you honor and integrate those sides of yourself that you were taught not to love, the more you start to radically love those sides of yourself and bring them into yourself and start to express those more outwardly and not let them be shunted or shamed or hidden away deep in the bowels of our being. The more you are opening your field up to bring in more opportunities for greater expansion, greater awareness, greater clarity, and again, a greater sense of action which orients you towards your integrity. Very deep, very deep energy here. And again, you'll recognize just how powerful you are as you move through this radical act of integration. But before I move on, I did make a note of this here. It's very important, since Aries rules the head and we do still have a lot of Aries energy during this full moon. Be very mindful of the steps you take. And again, like I said earlier, what part of yourself is prompting you to take those steps? And also be mindful of the thoughts you're responding to, too, because again, emotions are responses. And sometimes our thoughts are not our own, but we jump to emotionally respond to those thoughts, which just puts us in this like tangled loop of pain and hurt and past traumas and past wounds, where we are now not even responding, we're now reacting to things that really don't need our efforts or energy. And because there's still a lot of energy in Aries, a lot of heady energy, because Aries does rule the head, heady energy. And then with Mars in Aries, if we're not careful about what we are listening to internally, we will be taking actions that go directly against what we are integrating, or what we want to expand upon. And especially because Jupiter expands anything it touches. It's not just good luck, because luck is neutral. Jupiter expands anything it touches. So if you're not being mindful of the thoughts and you're constantly finding yourself going in that spiral downward of, well, I don't have this, so I can't get this. And if I can't get this, I don't have that. You're going down, 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 down. And then you're expanding on the downward spiral. And then you're opening your field up to things that will continuously bring more stress and inundation of the things you don't really need to expand upon. It's this radical act of almost like self-delusion, but it's only delusion until you have the proof to back it up. And all of these transits we're moving through, it's like it's asking you to believe before you perceive, because you will not be able to perceive until you believe. So don't allow your mind to get caught up in the downward spiral. Don't allow your mind to get sucked into that vortex of doubt and uncertainty and fear, because the more you get sucked into that vortex, the more you're going to build up those Chiron walls again and then trap yourself in that prison and call it a home. This full moon is about releasing. and becoming comfortable in the uncertainty and becoming comfortable navigating the expanse, even when the expanse is pitch black and even when it's bright as day. It's about becoming comfortable navigating the expanse, becoming so familiar and intimate with the expanse that the space no longer phases you. It doesn't excite you. It doesn't delude you into a fearful mindset. It just is. That's when you have the most power to maneuver. It's when you are not reacting. You're responding. And it's a skill that you can learn. It's a muscle you can build. So again, be very mindful of the actions you take and what internally is prompting those actions. If you catch yourself even for a moment going on that downward spiral, stop your mind in its tracks. Stop thought, bring it back and say, well, what if it does work out? Not only what if it does work out, what if it's a lot easier than I'm even believing it ever can be? What if? What if? Every time you feel yourself spiraling. But what if everything I'm worrying about isn't even a thing to worry about? What if? What if? Oh yeah, and then we have our quintile with Pluto, our Mars quintile aspect with Pluto there. And again, this is a tight orb. It's about a 1 degree orb. And I think the energy of this aspect is really just amplifying and accentuating what we spoke on with Chiron and Mercury together, and almost giving it like this more graceful and easeful edge to it, similar to how Venus was working with the sun and the moon and the Eros square. It's because, again, quintiles are not an aspect that you have to actively work towards embodying, but you do need to bring awareness to the fact that you have these things in order to actualize them in your life. Because quintile aspects can point to innate gifts that we have within us. This is just when it's in your birth chart, but quintile aspects point to gifts that are innately within you. But say you have a gift for painting, for example. You're never going to know you have a gift for painting until you pick up a paintbrush. You'll never know you have a gift for karate until you put on the white belt or whatever the first belt is. You always have to start somewhere, and the gift is not going to be readily apparent the moment you pick up that paintbrush. But it's about the experimentation and the awareness of it. So, with Mars and Pluto coming together in that quintile aspect, Mars is a planet of action and orientation and integrity, and Pluto is, how do I start this? Death, transition into birth, into life, into death, into transformation. It's this constant cycle of evolution. And so, with Mercury and Chiron coming together, asking you to get really comfortable with the walls being crumbled down really quickly so you can learn how to navigate the expanse, this aspect here is helping you put your action towards that element of transformation. So, if you don't allow yourself to become overwhelmed with the bigness of the expanse and how exposed you are in that expanse, but rather just take one step, literally one step at a time, tangible actions towards learning how to navigate the expanse while you are there, you are going to find you have a gift for it. You have a gift to usher yourself through transformation by your sheer willpower. And it really is that simple here. It really is that simple. I won't speak any more on that, just again because of time. We're almost done here, though. We did kind of touch on Gemini, or Uranus and Gemini, excuse me. I wrote a whole new world. Okay, Ariel. Yeah, and I bring up again what I mentioned in Taurus season about the chains that I said earlier, how you may have felt bound when Uranus was in Taurus, but the second it moves into Gemini, it's like you didn't necessarily escape the bounds, but you have become something much greater than anything the bounds could ever contain. That's the energy that we're getting with Uranus and Gemini. But it's important to note that any sense of freedom, right? Any sort of freedom or expansion that you come across, there's always some sort of cost that comes with that freedom or the expansion. And it's not necessarily a cost that you will be upset about the loss of it, but there is always some sort of cost. And in this case, especially since Uranus and Venus are both in Gemini territory together, I have Venus and Gemini, so I love the energy. But if you're not used to the energy of Venus and Gemini, and especially of Uranus and Gemini, most of us aren't, right? This is one of the first times, except for last year, that it's been in Gemini for most of our lifetimes. But the thing with Venus and Uranus and Gemini, it's a very fast pace stimulation desiring, do it for the plot kind of energy. And so if you are not approaching things with a logical mind, but just a mind that's bored and wants to go after something just because it's bored, you might get yourself in situations that you are forced to learn lessons that either A, you already learned, or B, you really didn't need to learn. And you're just kind of, it's like a side quest that didn't actually have to be done because it's a lesson you've already integrated. And it's almost like a lesson of saying, like, hey, just because you're bored doesn't mean you can get reckless kind of energy. That's what Uranus and Venus together in Gemini are doing right now. And they will be within a 10-degree orb. So they are still technically, very loosely, but technically conjunct. And so there is this unpredictability to it of going after things that seem beautiful and fresh and lively and fun and exciting and sensual and all of these things. But again, it could bring you down roads where you are altering your brain chemistry for quite literally no other reason other than you were bored and decided to do something you probably intuitively knew you really didn't have to do. You really didn't have to go towards. And I'm actually going to read directly off of my notes for this next part because there's wisdom here that I don't know if I'd be able to articulate without reading directly what I wrote. So this is what I said. It'd be wise to take a bit of caution, not only during this full moon, but during the Uranus transit through Gemini in general, to ensure that what you are doing and what you are going after isn't just reckless for reckless's sake, but something that can foster a more fortified and aware mindset and connection to those around you, your community, and the ways you interact with life in general. Your mental patterns and habits are going to shift drastically during this transit, and it's easy to lose the you within the atmospheric realm of this air sign. Don't get tricked, because Gemini is a trickster energy. Don't get tricked. Gemini is the youngest trickster energy of the zodiac. So where like the Piscean trickster, the Aquarius trickster energies, the primordial tricksters, they are much more wise than Gemini. Gemini is like a Loki trickster, and no shade to Loki. I respect the fuck out of Loki, but he did a lot of things because he was bored and just wanted to see chaos reign, and it got him in really shitty situations where he had to forcibly drink poison from a snake for a very long time, a very long time. Lost all of his family other than his kids, but lost his kin that he grew up with and shared space with for the majority of his life, and ended up having to fight against them during Ragnarok. Loki is wise in his own right, but he did a lot of things just out of sheer boredom and curiosity. That's the trickster energy of Gemini, where it's not rooted in wisdom. I shouldn't say it's not rooted in wisdom, but a lot of the times it's rooted in boredom and curiosity, which can be a deadly combination if not approached with the respect and the tact that it needs to allow you to fortify the wisdom from those lessons. And you know what? I'm just going to read off of the rest of the notes I have on here too, because again, sometimes my writing is a lot more clear and concise than my words because I love to talk. Shout out to all my Gemini energy, speaking of Gemini, but I said specifically regarding this full moon with Uranus at the critical 0 degree mark and the subconscious and unconscious being highlighted in its own way, it'll be easy to get gooped up in the tricks of the mind and the unconscious realm. So please just be mindful of what you are agreeing to and moving towards, especially while Mercury is still conjoining Chiron and it's ruling over this placement, Uranus, here. Anything that you go toward that your mind may be telling you could be fun, but your body is sending glaring signals of warning, don't do it. And don't believe in FOMO either. The things you agree to have the potential to ramp up and exacerbate those old wounds of the walls that crumbled. And if you're not careful, you may find yourself, as I mentioned earlier, it always comes back. If you're not careful, you may find yourself rebuilding those walls again instead of navigating the new open landscape due to a circumstance you put yourself in that you maybe weren't ready to face and integrate. There's no need to rush to this newfound spaciousness. It's infinite, so take it in strides, especially during this full moon. And then, and it's making 3 degree orb, but it's making a loose sextile with Neptune. Uranus is making a loose sextile with Neptune, which is only going to emphasize and amplify any illusions and delusions that will play tricks of the mind. That'll make you think something's a good idea when your body can feel it is not. So take heed, take caution. And going along with Neptune there, we also have Neptune squaring Psyche, which will be at 2 degrees and 7 minutes in Cancer. Neptune is at 3 degrees and 17 minutes. So just over a degree orb. And Psyche in our birth charts represents our soul. It's the path we take to discover the true expanse of our soul. It's the trials and tribulations we move through in order to discover the we that exists in the me. The we being I think you get it. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you will. So heck yeah, we're not going to go too deep into that. But making this harmonious aspect with Neptune, it's almost allowing you to take the dreams and the wishes and the desire, not even desires, but like the knowingness of the path of your soul, that North Node path, that destiny path. It's helping you take those ideas and grounding them into reality. I think I said harmonious aspect. It's a square. I think I might have said sextile, but it's a square. So not only is it helping you take these ideas and expand upon them, but it's also helping you ground them into reality. So at the same time, there will be illusions of doubt playing a role in this, but it's almost as if it's similar to something we talked about, I think, in the Libra full moon, where the doubts are going to ramp up, but it's only so you can learn that the doubts don't actually belong to you. And the reason you have this desire to move towards what your soul is yearning for is because it's possible. If it wasn't possible, you wouldn't even know to have the desire. So the doubts are going to come up to almost like test you, to almost test you and like bait you and say, are you sure you can do that? What makes you worthy of that? How do you deserve that? And you're going to say, get out of here with your fishing line. I don't care about that. I got a filet mignon at home. I don't need your bait. Fuck you, doubts. You don't belong to me. Blow them away. And in that pursuit, in your ability to say fuck you doubts and blow them away, you're also strengthening the true seat of what your soul is actually moving towards. You're strengthening your willpower to get there. You're strengthening all of the other, like you're fortifying everything else you need in your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit to actually move towards the path of your destiny, the path of your North Node, the path of what you truly desire in this life. And you may even have like sudden aha moments that maybe don't make logical sense, but you know they mean something. And if you have those moments where of clarity where you're just like, you either hear like a phrase in a conversation, or you see a sign, or you see something externally that you don't know why, but you know it's important, take note of it somewhere. Write it down somewhere that you can either go back to or you will be reminded of it. Take note of it. Take note of it. Because those little hints are like not compass points, but like you know what I'm talking about, like aligning you towards the path of your destiny. So just take note of anything that feels, for whatever reason, feels important. Oh, and then the final one, we have Neptune also making a somewhat loose sextile with Pluto, a 2-degree orb. And I just wrote, this is aiding in the pursuit of transition of the old self to align with the amplification of the new self that is actively making moves toward the path of your destiny. And then that is all the notes I had for the Scorpio full moon. I said it's not going to be as long as the last one, and then we ended up pretty much taking that time. Because, like I said, I like to yap. I like to yap. I love to yap. And I feel that while there are moments I can be more concise, sometimes the explanations and the expansion of the word helps to just anchor it in that little bit, and just a little bit more. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank y'all for being here. Happy Scorpio full moon. Again, this one is not as in your face as some of the other moon cycles and the full and new moons that we've moved through thus far, but it's potent in its subtlety. It's potent in its subtlety. It's transformative. It's action oriented. It's a lot. It's a lot, but behind the scenes. It's like just before a show starts. I don't know if anybody's a dancer or like a theater kid or something. It's like there's this excitement backstage just before, like 5 minutes before curtains open. Everybody's running around. They're getting their last minute costumes on. If there's like things falling out of the hair, they're bobby pinning. They're fixing their makeup. They're doing what they need to do. They're getting their places. Like everything's getting set up, and it's like this buzz. It's like this excited buzz of like, oh, it's about to start. It's about to. Oh, I have full body chills again. It's about to start. That's the energy of this full moon, where it's almost like us fixing the last minute hair and putting a bit more blush on and putting the right shoes on and changing our costumes. That's us actively transitioning out of the old and into the new. But while we're making this transition, this full moon isn't like when the show starts. The full moon is still we're backstage and we're getting ready. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but the audience would never know. The audience doesn't know what's going on backstage. So it's like you are what's happening backstage, and you're also the audience, and you're also the building itself, and you are also the stage and the props. Like you're every aspect of it. So there's a lot going on, but again, behind the scenes. So let it happen. We have a lot more direct aspects with the Taurus New Moon coming up, so look out for that video in a couple weeks. But otherwise, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for being here. I love y'all. You rock. Hags. And that's it. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Love y'all. Bye.